is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today. Tanya Blackwell is a grant and contract supervisor at Seattle's Children Research Institute. She received her BS in aerospace engineering from Georgia Tech, where she spent her early years as a research administrator. Tanya obtained her MS in research administration from the Johns Hopkins University. During her tenure in research administration, she has held both departmental pre award and post award and central office pre award roles and has found the varying perspective to serve her career and professional growth tremendously. She aspires to have a lasting impact on the profession through its service in Incura. Tanya, take it away.
Thank you so much, Latasha, for the wonderful introduction. And I am humbled to be here with our esteemed panelists. So I want to welcome all of you, our Incura community, our friends, and our guests who have joined from throughout the country and around the world to celebrate, honor, and learn from these distinguished guests. You are in for quite a treat. One of the things I learned very recently about Women's History Month is that every year there's a theme. And this year, the theme is celebrating women who share our stories. And I can think of no better way to do that than this panel discussion. So this discussion will allow us to probe into the minds and hearts of these four women who collectively have over 85 years of experience in research administration and leadership. Like I said, you're in for quite a treat. Now, I do have some questions prepared to keep the conversation flowing and on topic. But again, I want to remind you that this is intended to be an interactive experience. So I strongly encourage you to submit your questions through the chat or the Q&A, and I will get to as many as possible. And you can submit a question directly to a specific panelist or to the whole group. So I will get started by introducing the panelists and then asking each a specific question that is inspired by her story that you will learn more about as we go throughout this discussion. So I will start with Danielle. Danielle Cisse is the Director of Compliance at the New Jersey Office of the Secretary of Higher Education. She is responsible for shaping and delivering on the strategic goals of Governor Phil Murphy's Fiscal Accountability Plan by examining higher education institutions' budgetary operations and governance, and outlining risk mitigation metrics for compliance and long-term financial sustainability. That's a mouthful, right? Danielle has worked in various positions in the nonprofit sector and prides herself on successfully developing and implementing robust community-centric programs that support New Jersey's residents. She has a decade of progressive experience in research administration, operations management, and compliance. She holds a bachelor's in planning and public policy from the Edward J. Blostein School of Planning and Public Policy at Rutgers University, and a master's in public administration from the Center for Executive Leadership in Government at Rutgers University. Welcome, Danielle. Thank you so much for participating in this panel discussion. And so I was very impressed by reading your resume and your bio. And so I want to ask you, having risen to the ranks of leadership early in your career, you must have learned from other people. What books or resources would you recommend to develop or strengthen your leadership skills, and why?
I have absolutely learned from a lot of people, both formally and informally. And I happen to be an avid reader. So what I will say is that one of the books that I think in the last few years has had a great impact on me is called The Leadership Challenge by Kouzes and Posner. The Leadership Challenge really helps you examine what your thoughts are about leadership, why you lead, and how you want to lead. I think it's really important, first and foremost, to understand your strengths and your weaknesses. And it really helps you take a deep dive into the things that are very relevant in terms of leadership. I know that leadership and management is used very synonymously, but a leader and wanting to aspire other individuals is something that takes management to another level. I also enjoy the book Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. He also has another book called Finding Your Why, and he really delves into finding about your personal values and how you can use your personal values to help lead others so that they can find what is really important to them. Machiavelli for Women is another one that I think is a very interesting read about women in the workplace and the challenges that we face, and how if we have the courage to move past some of these obstacles, we can really conquer a lot of great things. And finally, Lead Like a Woman by Deborah Smith Pig. It basically talks about the values that women have, the strengths that women have that are sometimes looked past, and how we can use that to our advantage.
Thank you so much. Those are some great resources, and we will make sure that they are provided at the end of this session as well. And so now I am so happy to introduce Bryony. Bryony Wakefield has worked in the higher education sector for over 20 years, working in partnership with faculty collaborators, university executive, and professional staff to understand researcher and partner needs is a key focus. This focus has enabled her to lead diverse teams to deliver timely, appropriate, and easily accessible research services to support discovery and to promote a culture of research integrity. Bryony is the Executive Director of Research Services at the University of Glasgow in Scotland. She enjoys working in partnership with the Vice Principal for Research and Knowledge Exchange on the development and implementation of the University of Glasgow research strategy. She joined the team in 2022 because she was prompted by the caliber of the researchers and the professional staff and the values-based university research strategy. The research services team are a dynamic group of skilled research professionals with diverse specialisms and expertise. So, Bri, you have a distinct leadership style that has been quickly noticed by your new team at the University of Glasgow. It's only been a year. What thought leaders have shaped your leadership style and how?
Thank you. And also thank you so much for having me here today. It's wonderful to be here. And I hope everyone is enjoying the webinar so far and having maybe a cup of tea or coffee while you listen to us. So in terms of thought leaders, I think I would talk more about the attributes that I see in certain leaders. And it's about the attributes that I see in their day-to-day way of working. And so that really comes to mind is around kindness. It's about acknowledging and appreciating the contribution of all team members. It's also about decisiveness. And for that, I mean, it's about making an informed decision and making an informed decision by bringing together data, bringing together different perspectives, taking that into account. We can always only make a decision on what we have at hand. And so it's also after a decision's been made, it's taking time after that on the implementation to reflect on that and say, are we going in the right direction? And it's those leaders that aren't afraid to say, actually, it was right at the time, but now with new information, we need to change that direction. So other attributes that I really appreciated and valued in the people I've worked with and that really have led the way my leadership style has been the people that take the time to empower their staff, really supporting them to succeed, and also consciously stepping back to allow others to flourish. I will say for all leaders, it's those that come with passion and excitement in all that they do and try and create an atmosphere where everyone wants to come to work and be part of that team. So they're the attributes that excite me.
Thank you so much. That's very inspiring. And next up, we have Rosemary. Rosemary Madnick is the Vice President for Research Administration at the Lundquist Institute for Biomedical Innovation at Harvard UCLA Medical Center. In her current position, she is responsible for all aspects of research administration at the Institute, including grants and contracts, pre and post, clinical trials, industry agreements, investigational drug services, regulatory and ethical compliance, biological resource center, environmental health and safety, and core equipment. All things research administration, right? Her experience with research administration at various institutions has provided her with more than 30 plus years of knowledge in the profession. Her experience has given her distinct skills in research, development, and evaluation of policies and programs, as well as the know-how in investigating and analyzing problems with broad impact using data to develop sound decisions. Welcome, Rosie. So glad to have you here. So outside of all of your accomplishments, the thing that really stood out the most to me is that every step of your career, you have given back to the profession through service and leadership. So can you please tell us why this was important to you and how doing so has benefited your career?
Thank you, Tanya, very, very much. Really appreciate that. For me, volunteering has always been about engagement. And I can say it's always has been a part of my fabric, starting very early with parents who are active volunteers. So being, my parents being active volunteers, that was something, as I said, was always part of who I was growing up. So I always have volunteered professionally as well as personally. And at the beginning of my career, I started volunteering at the regional level and then progressed through the national level. Starting off, for example, as working the registration desk, going ahead and volunteering for doing edits on particular documents. So for me, the volunteering was the vehicle to make a real lasting difference. Unlike other aspects of life, we may not always be able to control what we do, but volunteering, I really feel, allows us to choose where and how we can make a difference. And that's what makes it so special. And it's easy to get inspired with research administration because it is truly something that I care about. And more importantly, it's rewarding to see your direct impact from that volunteering. So at the end of the day, the volunteering gives me, and I feel like it gives people, a sense of purpose. That fulfilling feeling of giving back, contributing to society unparalleled. And giving back is also a great way to get to know your own community. And I've gotten to know so much of my community with a lot of the members that are now my dearest and closest friends. So when I volunteer, I have the opportunity again to meet people. And at the end of the day, service and leadership by volunteering evokes gratitude, and it has its health benefits, and it just feels good. Thank you.
It does feel really good, and you can see the joy every time people are volunteering and being of service. So last but not least, I would like to introduce the Queen of Research Administration herself, Marianne Woods. Marianne is the director of the Master's of Science program in Research Administration and a faculty member in the Department of Government, Krager School of Arts and Sciences, Advanced Academic Programs at Johns Hopkins University. She is an international specialist on all issues pertaining to research administration and has consulted and lectured on research administration issues throughout the world. She is often called upon by universities, both domestic and international, to consult on complex research administration issues, ranging from misconduct in science to licensing of intellectual property. Prior to coming to Johns Hopkins University to launch the MS in Research Administration programs, Marianne retired as Senior Associate Vice President for Research at the University of Texas in San Antonio, where she was responsible for oversight of all aspects of research administration, including sponsored programs, pre- and post-award, contracts and industrial agreements, research integrity, research compliance, including the IACUC, IRB, COI, export controls, research support, commercialization, technology transfer and innovation, classified clearances, and metrics for research administration. Again, all things research administration. She was responsible for the development and implementation of university-wide policies and procedures ranging from conflict of interest to intellectual property. She was also a member of the FBI Citizens Board of Directors and a member of InfraGard. And I also would just like to point out that she has also won every award that NCURA offers to acknowledge and honor our members. So, Marianne, thank you so much for spending time with us today. So, as one who has touched all areas of research administration, you know how the various roles differ and how they work together. So what traits would you say are necessary for a leader to be effective in any of these positions?
Well, I want to thank you for that great introduction. I don't know that I can live up to it, but I do thank you for it. Um, I think that some of the traits that I see, and I see in my students as well as seeing them in working within Cura, are traits that have to do with personality. Okay, being flexible, being kind to other people, um, volunteering, being enthusiastic. And I'll add one here with enthusiasm, being cheerful. Okay. Nobody wants to talk to a mopey dopey. I probably shouldn't use colloquialisms, but we don't want to talk to somebody that's always down. This is happening and this is happening. And those are traits that you need. Okay. Especially cheerfulness and flexibility and willingness to work with others and to help each others. Those come along with listening. And I think that is a key component to research administration. Listening to your principal investigators, listening to their staff, listening to others, listening to your staff, okay, and making sure that your staff is diverse, okay, that it is integrated, and that everybody has a say. Now, there are, some cultures where people don't ask questions when you're holding a meeting. So you have to make it available where those individuals can come to meet with you on a one-to-one basis in your office or, have lunch with you or something like that. In the past, I've taken my staff to lunch to ask certain kinds of questions. You call people on the telephone and you say, how are you doing? You stop by their offices and you say, how you doing? What's going on? And I'm so fortunate to have had so many wonderful mentors that taught me how to get along with faculty, how to develop syllabi, okay, how to interact with others, and how to visit with each other and make it so that it's a personal uh, discussion that you're having, and so that you also understand what they may be going through. So those are some of the characteristics.
Thank you so much. Those are all great responses, and I notice we're already seeing some common themes throughout the responses, so this is very exciting. So now that we have all of our panelists introduced and our get to know question out of the way, we're going to get into the hot topics that we have for this panel discussion. So first, we want to talk about challenges faced by women throughout the profession. So Marianne, I'll start with you this time. Presently, we know that the field of research administration has more women than men, but as we know, that hasn't always been the case. So can you share with us some challenges that you face being a woman in a once male-dominated profession?
Well, I came into research administration having been a departmental administrator, okay? And during my time, if you wanted to move up in research administration, you had to move out, okay? So I left the university that I originally started as a departmental administrator, and I moved to a position of director after this particular university had done a national search. And one of the things that I encountered was that I was stepping into the shoes of a man that had retired, and he had a PhD in chemistry. Okay, and I tell you this not to, not to say that that's bad or anything like that, but the first thing that happened to me is that I was part of a larger system, and they held a meeting. Okay, there was only one director of research in all 13 of these universities. And that director of research reported to the provost in all of these universities. They got us together on an annual basis. And I got together with them. We had a retreat for 3 days. And I got there, they had a big round table, okay, and we all sat at the round table. I was the only woman. I was the only person without a PhD in chemistry or biology. Okay. And I was the only woman in terms of having any type of divergent thinking. Okay. They would not speak with me. They would have conversations where they would not acknowledge what I was saying. And so it was a difficult time. This was, in the late 70s. And I was really quite shocked by that. When they did speak to me, the person from the system asked me, "Do you think you can follow in so-and-so's shoes?" And I said, "Absolutely not." I said, "I'm making my own path." And then I said to them, and this was on the last day, "I'm sorry that none of you really wanted to talk to me and get to know me. But I will say that my university is going to be #1 in research expenditures within the next 2 years." And I succeeded at that. They surpassed all the other universities. And then one of the men who had been a director of research, he came back several years later, and he was now provost, and he was on my campus, and he came to see me, and he said, "Marianne, would you like to come and work for me? You have done such a phenomenal job at this institution." And I said to him, "No, I would not like to do that. And I'll tell you why. You weren't nice to me. Okay? You did not treat me like an equal. You did not treat me like a human being. You ignored me for 2.5 days. Why on earth would I want to work for somebody like that?" And so I am so happy to see that we are all very integrated, that there's a lot of sharing that goes on at Incura, that other research administrators share with you and talk with you, and so on. But the early days, it was difficult.
Well, I have to congratulate you. Thank you for sharing that story. And it pains me to hear about that experience. But I also know that you stayed the course and you opened doors for other women in research administration to not have that experience. So thank you so much. And I will be continually looking for questions from the audience, but I will continue with this thought of challenges faced by women in research administration. So despite the growing number of women in research administration, our other panelists, would you like to share what have been some of your challenges?
Well, I was going to say, I think I was very fortunate very early, and I would say I think being a woman, sometimes you think about, has it helped me, has it hurt me, or has it not had an impact on my career? And I would say one of the things I see is that, first of all, there's still gender gaps today, and especially with gender equality issues. And it still remains unfinished business in every part of our world, including here domestically. Unfortunately, what we're seeing now, and what I've experienced, is gender equality in the workplace. It actually involves equal treatment, equal opportunities, access to resources, and the ability to grow into leadership positions. So although for many of us, we've seen undeniable progress over the past years, there's still much work to be done. So the work, I would say, for me as a woman, and how that's impacted me in research administration, is that I was very fortunate very early in my career to have excellent mentors and even early supervisors who gave me opportunities to ensure that I was positioned not based on my gender or any other factor, but what I brought to the table, and ensuring that when those opportunities were presented, I was able to be an advocate for myself, including making sure that there was pay transparency. So I would say that's something, as women in leadership, that we haven't hit the bar in pay equity. So that would be something I wanted to bring up.
Thank you so much for sharing. So we know that we'll continue to face challenges as women, but we also have a long history of overcoming those challenges. And so we're going to put up a poll question to get a pulse from everybody here in attendance to really think about what have been some barriers that have impacted either your professional development or your leadership. I really thought about the internal barriers that we experience. And I know a lot of times we don't necessarily focus on or address the issues that we experience internally, specifically as women. And so, Bri, I wanted to come to you because you provided this poll question. And I know that I've been going through some personal experiences with internal barriers with regards to imposter syndrome, even for this webinar. And I'm just reading the bio sketches and everything. I'm questioning, like, am I supposed to be here? And so can you speak to your internal challenges that you have overcome as you have progressed your way through leadership?
Thank you, I will. And I'll also just quickly read out the poll. So we've had 20% say internal to yourself, 27% say external factors, and 53% say relatively equal internal and external factors in terms of barriers. So just wanted to have that reference there. And I will say, Tanya, I think you're not alone in feeling that. I think a member felt quite humbled to be here, but also really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And one of the reasons why I wanted to put up that poll was because when I was thinking around the barriers and challenges that I've had in my own career, I thought if I was really being honest with myself, I felt that they were a combination actually of both internal and external factors. I thought actually a lot of the time it has been that internal factor. It has been thinking through, am I ready? Do I have the confidence? And I relate this specifically around when applying for a job. I think a lot of people, when they're looking at a position description, a job description, they will look at that. And there'll be some people in the world who will go, well, I can do 10% or I can do 50%. So of course I will apply. But I would say there's a large majority of people, and often they are women, who will look at a job description and they will go, well, I can do all of those things plus more. But then they'll go, but am I really the right person? Will they want me? And what I found over time is actually having more conversations with people. I think a lot of the time in the past, people have felt like applying for a role, they've had to be quite private about it and take it very much as a personal journey. But what I found is that when I started talking with colleagues and sharing the experiences and sharing whether or not I had the confidence, I actually found that support group, particularly the Incura colleagues, was incredibly supportive, offering to do mock interviews, offering to look at applications, but also just knowing that it was okay to reach out and also knowing that it was okay to have a go. And if I wasn't successful, that was also okay, because part of the success was actually just trying. So I think that personal barriers is something that I've had to work at overcoming. But I will say there have been external barriers. I don't want to pretend they haven't happened. I don't want to pretend that sometimes they have been quite hard, in that they've been quite shocking at times. I think one of the things that I have really learned is that people bring their assumptions, and they bring that to you almost as soon as they meet you. And those assumptions might be based on their own experiences, but that can really be a barrier to what you can do. And so I think it's, again, having a community where you can share when that has happened makes such a difference. And so if people are listening today, one of the takeaway messages I would say, if you feel that there are barriers, one of the first things is to talk about it, because that can just make such a difference to how you face the day.
I think that's spot on, because when I recognized that I was struggling with this imposter syndrome, the very first thing that I did was reach out to my network, because I know that I have people that are supportive of me, encourage me, they're my cheerleaders. And so I have some audience plants here that are tuning in, because I know that that's going to help give me the confidence that I need to deliver in this experience. So we have a question that I think is really important, because the reality of it is a lot of women in research administration and leadership are trying to excel in their career and develop as leaders, but also struggle with balancing family responsibilities, particularly when you have small children. So does anybody have some advice on how to excel professionally, develop as a leader, and also take care of your family without compromising yourself?
I was going to just chime in with what you asked, and definitely it is a tall order. And I think what we're seeing now is, I call us the bookend generation, because for many folks, they have young, teenage, early adult children, as well as taking care of aging parents as we're all living a little bit longer. And I think a part of that is to be able to have that communication to say, it's okay. You don't have to be superwoman. You have to just be normal and be able to communicate, and to take that stress off, to say you have to balance the weight of the world. So it's this book I really enjoy reading, is Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And I think a part of that is permission to let go of certain things in your life. So the word perfection, first of all, has to be out of your vocabulary, and just to say, what can I do to find balance, whether it's taking care of my family, taking care of aging parents, and making sure that I'm meeting what I need to at work, and saying, it's permission, and I'm not going to get everything, but I have to do the best that I can. And then I think the most important thing, like the theme that was circling around, is having your network or your village. And I call that having my own personal board of directors. So I've got a core group that I can go to, and I literally call those people my board of directors. Well, they will give me the good, the bad, and the ugly for what I need to go to them. And it's a very, very safe space. So another thing is making sure that when you do go to your village, your core group, your board, that it is a safe space where you can go ahead and bounce some of these things off folks. And remember, we're not the first individuals or women to be able to go through this. People have been doing this for generations. So I think it's all about that, is giving yourself permission not to be perfect.
The National Science Foundation looked at this, I guess, about 20 years ago, when they looked at why were PhDs, women in science, leaving science, okay, at the four-year colleges and the and other higher education, and going to community colleges to teach. And what they found was that it was because women wanted a more balanced life, and there weren't any provisions for women to have children. Okay, if you had a laboratory, you were just supposed to come to your laboratory, do your work, and they were making no stop on the time clock for tenure and other things like that. So they felt more comfortable going down to the community college level. In research administration, I firmly believe that we have to, and we do in many cases, open things up for women to be able to care for their children, to be able to take some time off to go to their children's performances, to interact with their children, to bring their children on campus, okay, and other things like that. And we need to start looking and doing more in terms of childcare and childcare on campuses, so that you can have your child close by, especially if it's an infant, you can interact with that infant. Now, I personally have to tell you that I built it into contracts when I went to other universities, okay? And in fact, when I went to one university, I was pregnant with my second child, and I built into the contract that I would be bringing her on campus for the first, 3 months or 4 months, and I would be breastfeeding her. Okay. And unfortunately for me, the the provost that I had my contract with, he left. And so by the time I got there with my baby, I had a new provost. And when I was, in meetings and nursing her, which I'm not a shy person, so I just, nursed her, right? And he said, Marianne, I have to talk to you. I said, okay. And he said, I don't think you should be bringing that baby here and nursing her. It makes me uncomfortable. And I said, it's in my contract. I'm sorry. But when she's 3 months old, then she will, I will get a sitter or a nanny and she will go home. But it's this type of barriers that we need to look at, and that we need to make sure that it's okay, that there are breastfeeding rooms for women that are lactating and such, that there are, as I said before, that there are opportunities for women to participate with their children, and men as well. I don't want to leave men out. And that we are, our research administrators are whole. Okay, it's not one or the other. It's not, well, you either come in at 8 o'clock and you leave at 5 o'clock, or you can't work here. It shouldn't be like that. It should be more of a flexible schedule. And I think with COVID, we got some flexibility there. And I'm hoping that now that COVID is over, that we don't turn into being very, very rigid.
I will say COVID has been a good thing for me, especially with having children as well and being able to work remotely. But I would like to pivot a little bit and go to Danielle. We have a question that I really think is helpful for a lot of people. So can you share with us some challenges that you have experienced as a young woman and a woman of color, and being taken seriously as you have ascended through your leadership journey?
Well, I guess it helps that sometimes people do underestimate me because I am young. Also, I will say that I've worked in spaces where it lacked representation and I happened to be the only person of color in the room. I think what's really important is for me to personally solidify myself and make sure that I am doing the work that I need to do, so that when I can go into these spaces and perhaps someone tries to undermine me, that I'm able to actually communicate what the needs are. I also struggle with imposter syndrome. So sometimes when, if you're not prepared, someone can question what you are stating, and you can maybe think that, maybe did I make a mistake? I remember 10 years ago, I used to check all of my numbers like 3 times. But I think it's really important for you to understand what you bring to the table and continue to affirm that. Also, reaching back out to your network. The current position that I have, I was nervous before I applied for it. And I talked to actually my mentor, and she was very, very encouraging. And she kind of told me, listen, you've done the work, you've gotten the education, you are meant to be in that space. So I do think it's really a personal thing.
I agree. Thank you so much for giving that insight. And we actually had a few people that have addressed another upcoming question, and I want to send this one to you, Bri. So we have talked about, and we see that the numbers of women in research administration have improved, but we know that the percentages of women in leadership, particularly executive level positions, has yet to see this improvement. So can you speak to us about how we can address this imbalance and any recommendations you have to do so?
I think having panel discussions like today, like it's fantastic to look at who's on this call and see they're all holding strong leadership roles. I think when we look at particularly in Kura across the board, we have so many women in leadership roles that I think we can celebrate and continue to celebrate, because I think by talking about it, by being vocal about it, it makes people think, oh, well, why isn't that what we're doing all the time? I think we are seeing a shift. I think we're seeing a change. Maybe something that we could do, though, is share more about the transferable skills that we're bringing into those leadership roles, how we're applying for those. But I talked also earlier about mock interviews. And I think for those that sometimes do feel a barrier, that internal barrier, that imposter syndrome, doing mock interviews with colleagues, with those in leadership roles, is really valuable, so that when you step up and have the opportunity to talk about what you can do, you say that with such confidence. So I think sometimes, we get to the interview, we get to the second, third, fourth stage, and then maybe sometimes we pull ourselves down by just not having that confidence that perhaps others bring to it. So I think one way to change the balance is to just be very vocal about constantly the need to do that.
Absolutely. So, Rosie, in a similar vein, I have heard the saying that it's lonely at the top. And you have definitely climbed your way at the top. And so I would love to hear from you as a vice president for research administration. What does this mean to you as an executive leader, especially knowing that there are not a lot of people that look like you in these positions?
So when I think of the phrase, it's lonely at the top, when I think of loneliness, I think of isolation and exclusion. So in many ways, I don't feel as lonely in the sense of isolation and exclusion. I have been so fortunate throughout my career to be surrounded by colleagues and mentors that I could lean on. And you really do not find too many professions like this. So as I have moved up through my professional journey and trajectory, at every step of the way, I had folks that were there lifting me up and, and just being those cheerleaders and really encouraging me. So I did not feel that lonely isolation and exclusion. You may feel like that, when it comes to being at a new institution, just because it's new, but at the core of what I do as VP of Research Administration, I do not feel lonely at the top. If anything, I feel like I have my entire village who's working with me at my own institution. They just don't know that they're not employed here, but it's that invisible village that's there. So you don't go through that, isolation and loneliness. And I think a part of that loneliness is that exclusion. I don't feel excluded at all.
That's a beautiful testimony. And I hope that that encourages all of the women that are listening in that have aspirations of climbing and worry about what their experience will be there. And I think that's a perfect opportunity also for us to talk about inclusion, because you have not felt lonely at the top because of the inclusion that you have experienced. And so I would like to just throw this out to everybody on the panel, and anybody can chime in. With regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion, we all know and understand that it helps to improve research outcomes, for example, but can you speak to us about how diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives help to improve outcomes for the profession of research administration, as well as our overall organizations?
I think when we look at diversity and equity and inclusion, I think that it brings to the workforce a divergent point of view. Okay. And it brings to us a foundation that we can use to build research administration and to build a research office the way that it needs to look, to represent all the clients that we serve, all the constituents that we have, and all of the areas in compliance that we have. We're a very complicated profession, and y'all know that. We're very complicated. And that's why we say, well, we can't just say, yes, we have to say, well, let's think about this and talk about this. And I think one of the ways that we can help each other, okay, in this profession and in the quest to make things better, okay, is to be role models, okay, to make sure that people are included to make sure that they are included and not cut from the pool. Okay, that you give people a chance, and you give them a chance. You look at their name and you say, well, maybe that's an African American, maybe that's a Mexican American, I don't know. But you give people an opportunity, and that's what we're talking about. If our people are cut out at the very beginning, okay, they don't even get an interview, which has happened to me. Okay, I've submitted my papers to a job that I felt I was eminently qualified for. And I do have at the bottom of my resume, it says Mexican American, 2 children. Okay. And I don't know if people looked at that and said, well, I don't want her with us. Forget that. But when you're excluded like that for no reason, you've got the credentials, and yet you are excluded from the pool. Okay. That is, that really harms research administration and research in general. And that's why NSF and NIH and other organizations are asking for information about diversity, okay, and inclusion. And they're looking at inclusion of populations, the diversity in populations for the research that's being done, as well as diversity at the institution and what's going on at the institution, so that different people are included.
I think another thing where we have seen diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts has been when in 2020, when we started to make the pivot from being in person to seeing remote work as a viable option. And what this did was really open up doors to professional opportunities to many folks where those opportunities were not before. So many opportunities were restricted to individuals and our members, their geographic locations. So I think the remote work really opened up efforts for members to go ahead and bring sometimes their backgrounds and their backgrounds to their new work, to their work environments. Because once again, you're probably were just restricted to working in your geographic area. So you as a perfect example, Tanya, to be able to now work in the Pacific Northwest. So you bring your professional knowledge, skills, and abilities to an organization that may not have had that opportunity to be able to have you lead them. And I think the DEI efforts have definitely opened up those particular doors.
That's a great point, and it ties in with Marianne's divergent point of view. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and most of my experience has been in Georgia, but now I get to bring all of that experience to Seattle Children's, where they wouldn't otherwise have the perspective that I bring, having worked at different institutions in a different environment and culture. So thank you for pointing that out. And I would like to ask Danielle, can you share with us what the transition from being an individual contributor to being a manager or supervisor was like, and how do you start delegating instead of being the person who's flexible and willing to help everyone else and end up doing the work?
Sure. I will say that it was during the pandemic where I had a transition from being a team worker to being the leader. And I like to say it was a crisis opportunity. It was tough because we were dealing with the transition of being in person to fully remote. And also it was a challenge to translate what I found was institutional knowledge into showing other people how to do the work. So I did follow like basic charts where it says, do delegate, put aside. It was really tough, but things like creating presentations, doing more standing meetings, doing roles and responsibilities matrix, those types of things really did help to sort of take the institutional knowledge and put it on paper. And always, again, taking the time to work with individuals, understanding their strengths, their weaknesses, and making sure that what you're trying to communicate is actually getting coming across properly.
So something that I think all of us can appreciate is that even at this stage of the game, there are still times when we are going to be the first in whatever experience. And so we've come very far as a society and as a profession, but have you experienced being the first, and what was it like for you? Maybe we can start with Brad.
So experiencing the first, well, I am the first international president of Incura. So that's a first. And that's been a really fantastic experience, and I really appreciate that opportunity. So I think with all the time, every time something's a first, you learn a lot along the way. I still remember the first time I went into what I call a senior management role, and it was an acting opportunity. And I still remember having this conversation with the person who gave me the opportunity, saying, "Do you think you're ready?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm ready." And then after a couple of weeks, I was like, "I don't think I'm ready anymore," because there's so much newness in what you're doing. And I think it's one of the things I think really is really important is sharing that newness with people. So I have a colleague of mine who's about to start a new leadership role as an executive director. And while their experience will be different to mine, I think it's been really valuable to be able to talk with them and share some of the learnings that I experienced. And so I think where we have that opportunity to share our learnings, it's really valuable to do that.
We are so happy that you are the first, and we hope that you will not be the last, and you will encourage others who are international leaders to service Incura in this way. Do we have any other panelists that want to share their experience being the first?
Well, I was the first on just about everything, so I don't want to share all
That's
that.
why you're the queen.
But what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about something that even as a mentor, we sometimes overlook, and that's politics. Okay, at every institution there are politics. Okay, at every institution there is an organizational chart, and you think that you understand the organization because you look at the organizational chart, but there are leaders that are quiet and you need to know about. And sometimes those leaders can get things done. So you need to know about the official documentation for the organization and then the unofficial documentation. Okay. And you need to understand politics. Right now, I'm mentoring 3 people. And those individuals that I'm mentoring, including my own daughter, okay, who's a medical doctor, you know, I talk to her every day, and I talk to my mentees as well about politics. And they present the scenario, and then they say, "What should I do?" And I said, "Well, let's think about it. Let's work it through." And I have to say that as I've made my way through research administration, that it was those women, and sometimes a man, who helped me understand the politics. And so you have to be asking those questions about what are the politics here, and who would make a good mentor for me within the institution, okay, so that I can understand what's going on. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. And I do want to circle back to Danielle, and actually everybody can ask, but I do want to hear about Danielle's experience as being the first.
So I just wanted to say that I'm the first director of compliance at the New Jersey Office of Higher Education. I'm also the first person implementing a statewide fiscal accountability program. Incredibly intimidating, but I will say that because it's new, I'm leaning on the network that I've built in the last 10 years. You know, you glean upon everything that you've learned every step of the way. And that's the reason why I always say that my experience is progressive. You lean on that network, you talk to your board or your council or your tribe, and you really try to leverage all of those things to do your best. And as long as you're operating, in my opinion, with integrity, I think that you can be successful.
Integrity, that's important. And Rosie, please tell us about your experience being first.
Well, I have many firsts, beginning with I am the firstborn in my family, so that counts for something. I was the first woman of African descent for Region 6. I was also the first woman of African descent for the president of the association. And I was also, too, the first executive director to combine the pre and post award office for the land grant institution for the state of Alaska, which was the University of Alaska Fairbanks. So that is one of the things that I know I have strived as my internal goals and markers, is like, what can I do to be the first, as in, as an individual. These other things are, a woman of African descent, that's the icing on the cake. That's just who I am. But that's something that I'm always trying to see what I could do. Even, in my current institution, I'm like, what can I do to be the first at doing something? So I'm very internally competitive. So this is my way of balancing what I do out, is what can I do to be the first?
I love it. I love it. Well, we'll look forward to seeing more of your first in your career as you continue. And so now I want to transition to talking about mentorship and sponsorship. Everybody so far has talked about mentors, and I think that is really important. I'm here in Cura, and I got a mentor very early in my experience. I reached out to Dr. Chris Monahan, and it was a random email that I sent to her to say, hey, will you be my mentor? And she not only agreed to mentor me, but she also recommended that I apply for the Catherine Taylor Core Travel Award. And that's how I got to my first meeting in Incura. And so I feel like mentorship is really important and it's necessary at every stage. But one thing that a lot of people don't know about is that we have a fellows program in Incura. And so, Bri, I would really love it if you would talk to us about the Incura Fellows program and how it has benefited your career and your institutions.
Thank you. And I have to say, it's one of my favorite topics. And so we are going to be putting a link into the Incura Fellowship program for those who don't know about it, so they can read about it. It also gives you that opportunity to see who has been successful in the past. And after I've responded, Marianne might want to come in because she has been a fellow. But one of the reasons I think it's really important to talk about the fellowship program is to think about it from two perspectives. One is to apply. That's the first part. We've just been talking about not just thinking about doing things, but applying. But also applying to do the fellowship, but also applying to be a host. So I was very fortunate at the University of Melbourne when I was there, that they supported me putting forward us as an institution. And it's meant that we've hosted, I think it's 6 different fellows from Incura. And it's such a great way to bring a person and experience into an institution. Obviously, not everyone can travel. And so rather than trying to find ways to do that, is bringing one person who brings their experiences, their time, talking with the fellow before they arrive about what they want to get out of the experience, but also what they want to give to the institution is so valuable. And I think, or I hope, that a large number of people who came to the University of Melbourne, also the people who worked at the university, got a lot from that. So I'm signing up the University of Glasgow. So if you want to come to Scotland, the best way to do that is to apply. But I think it's the community that you have. It's that international perspective, or a national perspective if you're, depending on the program you apply for. But really, it's taking yourself out of the comfort zone. And we haven't had a chance yet to really talk about taking yourself out of the comfort zone. But there's that wonderful diagram that hopefully many of you can have seen, which is about, this is where the comfort is, and then it's up here is where the magic happens. And I love that, because sometimes to make a difference, to experience something different, you also have to find that courage to step out of that comfort zone. And what more courage is there than someone applying to do a fellowship in a different country on the other hemisphere? So if you don't mind, we quickly jump to Marianne to talk about that.
Well, I was a fellow under Bri, and I went to the University of Australia at Melbourne, and I really learned a lot. I was pretty tired when I finished because, you know, it was kind of mutual, wasn't it, Bri, that different people were talking to me about different things, and because of some, you know, the knowledge that I have in research administration, but as well, I learned a lot. Okay, I learned, you know, as an example, the terminology, okay, of what they call things at a another university in a foreign country is different from our terminology. Okay, the way they have the university set up and structured is different from us. But I learned so much that I actually, when I took the job at Johns Hopkins, I actually have a concentration in international research administration management. Okay, and those courses are taught by a lot of different people that I met when I was in Australia, and then I also went to, you know, for a while there, I was going to several different arms conferences and that sort of thing, and it's just invaluable. Okay, it's invaluable in terms of your own personal growth. It gave me a different perspective on international contracts. Okay, it gave me a different perspective on, at the University of Melbourne, in every college they had, and I don't think they're called colleges, they're called something else, but it was a while back. But in every college they have somebody that does international research administration. Okay, and so I took these things back to me at my institution and said, wow, this is really exciting. Look at what's going on, and look at what we can do for the profession in order to make sure that through, you know, our international area, that we are offering international concurrent sessions and speakers and other things like that, because it's so important that we are a global society and that we are partaking in that. Thank you, Brian. I had a great time when I was there. And I have a great friend now.
And we had a great time when you were there as well.
So definitely check out the fellowship program. Danielle, can you share with us your experience with mentorship, either being mentored or serving as a mentor for someone else?
Sure. And I'll premise this by saying that, you know, there are informal and formal ways of being mentored or being a mentee. I found out as I was leaving my last institution that a lot of people felt that they were being mentored by me, although there was nothing formally in place. I had the opportunity in the fall 2020 in Cura Region 2 meeting to have a mentor. And her name is Cynthia Kane, and she's the vice provost of research administration at Lehigh University. And it was an amazing experience. She was just amazing all in all. And I think that it's really important to be able to talk to someone who can be a trusted ally, who can give you maybe an objective opinion on something that you're dealing with. And I still talk to her to this day. She is someone, as things happen in the workplace, that I can reach out to her, ask her what would she do if she was in my position. And again, it's just very invaluable. So, you know, if you don't have a mentor, go find one. Feel comfortable to ask someone, tell them, listen, you inspire me. I really like how you did this. Would you be willing to sit down and talk to me and give me some more information? And I believe that people will be willing to sit down and help you.
I haven't met anybody in Incura that wasn't willing to help somebody. So I think that is 100% accurate. And Rosie, would you like to contribute to the conversation about mentorship? Because I know you've had a lot of experience mentoring.
I have done formal mentoring through our Incura's Region 6 program, which is Lead Me. So I had started that program at the regional level under Linda Patton, who was my mentor during the very early program that Incura had, which was the Leadership Development Institute. So we took that back and started the Lead Me program under under the chairmanship of Bruce Morgan during that time. And the program is still active till today. I also have done another formal mentoring through National Institutes of Health, their SPAD mechanism, in which predominantly undergrad institutions need to have a mentor. So I am currently doing that through a PUI university, and I'm still actively involved with mentoring, as a matter of fact, to this day. So I have a call in into my mentee next Monday. So we meet on a regular basis. So it's something that brings joy to me.
I think it's pretty obvious to everyone why you all are regarded as leaders in research administration, and not just because of all the things that you have done that are impressive in your career, but also how you reach back and you mentor and lead others. So thank you so much for all of those contributions. So we're getting.
I wanted to add one more thing. I have found that as a mentor, there are some questions that mentees are afraid to ask. And so if they have a safe spot with you, a safe place, they can ask you as a mentor certain questions. Certain questions such as, what should I ask for pay? Okay. How do I negotiate a contract? Will you take a look at this contract and tell me, is there something that I should get clarified, as an example? How do I do contract negotiations? A lot of things like that. I'm unhappy at my job. Should I quit? And to that, I'll say, no, never, ever quit. Okay. Keep going. Just find another job. And and other obstacles that make it difficult to be in a certain institution, and maybe you find that the institution is not what you thought it was going to be. And so when you're dealing with your mentees, okay, you really need, as I said before, to create a safe zone so that they can ask all those questions they would never ask of anybody else, and know that you will never ever tell any of their secrets. I just wanted to add that.
I think that was important, especially because we know as women that sometimes we do not negotiate our salary. We do not I wrote down what you said earlier about putting things in your contract. And those are things that you don't always know are options unless there's somebody there to tell you, hey, you can negotiate this into your contract. And so I think that's a really important point to make. And so we're getting close to the end of our time. And so I wanted to ask all of our panelists if you had one piece of advice for those looking to develop their leadership skills, what would it be? And I will start with Rosie.
That's a really hard question because there's so much. But one of the things that comes to mind is the ability to motivate and inspire. And I think the ability to motivate and inspire are the qualities that we could use to empower our own team members and those that we lead to succeed. So part of motivating and inspiring is, you can build team morale, you can increase team happiness, build relationships, and inspire people to get connected and a lot more engaged. So that's going to be my one piece of advice: be able to motivate and inspire.
It was a hard question, but that was a great answer. Thank you so much. Danielle, what would be your one piece of advice?
Bryony touched on it earlier, but I'd just like to expand upon it. I encourage everyone to do it scared. There's actually a book, I believe it's by Ruth Sukup, and she basically talks about, doing things that might make you feel intimidated initially, but are going to have really great rewards. I consider my career as an investment in myself. So I think it's really important when someone asks you to do something, like speak on a panel with women with a lot of accolades, that you say yes, even if your fear gut tells you not to, because that could be something that is really, really valuable to you, yourself personally, or to your career.
Absolutely. That's what I'm doing right now. What about you, Bri? What is your last piece of advice for us?
Yeah, I would say it's about making connections. We've talked a lot on this call about the support that we've had from our colleagues who've become our friends. And I would say that Encura gives so many opportunities to make connections. So one concern I have is that someone might be on the webinar saying, well, that's already all very well, but I don't have that community to support me. And so if you're feeling like that, rather than thinking, well, I don't have that, maybe think, well, how can I make that happen? And I will say, just to plug the annual meetings coming up, it's all about inclusion. I know how many people I've met at the annual meeting, and it's made such a difference. So if you have the opportunity to go, take that opportunity. And when you're there, take also the opportunity to go and talk to people that you may not know, because they're going to turn around probably and say, I'm so glad you spoke to me. I was feeling a bit lonely myself, so I'm really glad you made that connection. So my piece of advice is to become a leader, it starts with connecting and creating that community to support you in the journey.
Absolutely. And Marianne, what would be your final piece of advice?
Well, I kind of wrote it down, okay? Start now, okay? If you want to be a leader, act like a leader, okay? Start by volunteering, start by meeting people, start by making yourself known. Propose a concurrent session, propose a workshop, get on different groups that are get on, collaborate, become a collaborate, person that's leading one of those things. Start acting like a leader and know that you are a leader. Okay. Reach out. Okay. If you don't know somebody, find somebody who knows it and ask them. Okay. I had so many questions that people have asked me in the past on something like intellectual property licensing, because they were moving into a new position and that was an area that they didn't know. Okay. I shared templates with them. I shared all sorts of information. And that's what you do when you're a leader and when you're mentoring people and want them to grow. And then speak up. Okay. Do not sit there all quiet. Speak up. Okay. Then be ready for change. When you apply someplace, by the time you get there, if it's a new job, it may look totally different. Okay. So be ready for change and, read about change and understand how change affects other people so that you can help them make necessary changes, especially if you're going in and you're going to be looking at an office and making some changes within the office. And then the last thing is love research administration. Okay. You have to have a love and a passion for this field. And if you have a love and a passion, it will show. Okay. And people will flock to you. One more thing, and that is read, read, read. Read the regs. Okay. If there's a new area that's come up and you want to talk about that, go to the COGR website as an example, pull down information so that you can read about what's happening in foreign influence and other areas like that. So become, well read in the field and have a good understanding of what the field is about. That's all.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
having
Those are
me.
great points. And I would like to offer my advice for anyone looking to develop their leadership, which is to own your superpower. I truly believe that every single one of us has a thing that we do better than other people, that we would do for free, that we can do with our eyes closed, with our hands tied behind our back. And those are usually the things that we can always show up, even if we had like 2 hours of sleep, we can still show up and bring big energy because it's our superpower. And I think sometimes it's harder to know exactly where to plug your superpower in. And that can be something that you can work on with your mentor or your leadership at your institution. Like, hey, I have a skill for this. I really like this. How can I use this to benefit the organization? And when you serve in different capacities within Encura, think about how you can apply that. I am a writer. I love to write. And so when I first got involved with Encura, I was serving as the communications chair for our region. It was a natural place for me to plug in my skills and then allow people to see me shine doing something that I like to do and I do naturally. And so that would be my recommendation for everybody. And I also wanted to give a quote I saw this morning, which ties in very well with a few of your advice and guidance, which is, it actually comes from Dolly Parton. And she said, if your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. And I believe that we've all heard from the four of you how you have been leaders and you have inspired me just on this call alone. And so I'm really excited about how you have inspired others that are listening in and what they will do with all of that. And so, as we know, this session is about honoring and celebrating women, and particularly women like yourselves in research administration and leadership. And so I would like to give you all an opportunity to call out the names of those women. Some of them have already been mentioned, so thank you for that. But let's just keep this energy going and share with us the women that have been impactful in your career or your leadership development. And we'll start with, I don't even know what order to start. We can just jump in. Whoever wants to go first. Go ahead, Rosie.
Wow. I do have a few women who've been instrumental and influential. I would be amiss if I tried to name each of them, because they are all incredibly special to me, because when you look at the trajectory of my career. But thinking about what you asked, but I would like to switch it around and say that what they all possess were three core values, and that was they're all authentic to me. They're all tenacious, and they are all humble. And that's what I like to say, is those women who are influential and inspirational to me, they all know who they are. And it's like the Academy Awards. I forgot to list everyone, and I don't want to be in that place. But I thought about, you know what? But these are the three core values I think that they all possess uniformly. So that's what I want to say.
Thank you. Danielle?
Yeah, so I already mentioned Cynthia Kane. She's amazing. She has just been very open and honest and a great support. I also want to mention someone named Marcia Bizong. She's the Vice Chancellor of Undergraduate Education at Rutgers Camden. She was one of the first women that I met when I started there. And very informally, she kind of just said, like, you're with me. And, she really helped me get a better understanding of how academia worked. She was a great principal investigator. So I will say that, it was informal, but it was very impactful.
Bri?
I think similarly to Rosie, I would say that there are people who've had huge impact. But similar one day, maybe I'll be at the Oscars, but until then, I think I'll hold on mentioning anyone's names. But I would say it's the qualities that they bring, it's that integrity, it's the living the values every day, not just when people are looking at them, but in the quiet moments that makes such a difference. And so if any of those people are on the call right now, thank you so much for all that you do.
Well, I have too many people to name as well, but I will call out some of them. Julie Norris, she has, she has passed, but I was in Texas with Julie Norris, was in Texas. And so she was, very influential. And I learned from Julie how to become very astute at understanding the regulations and being able to quote them from memory. Okay, I'm like, well, if Julie could do it, maybe I can do it too. And then I would add Jane Youngers. She's a past, president of Incura, but she also was in Texas and helped me a lot in understanding what was going on in the research environment in Texas. And then Kim Moreland. Okay, I call out Kim Moreland. Kim has, I think, mentored everybody. She's so kind, she's so smart, and so vivacious. Okay, And she also teaches for me, which I really like. But, Kim Moreland. And then one other person who has moved out of the University of Texas to a consulting agency, and that's Susie Sedgwick. Susie and I, we present a lot together, and I still continue to learn a lot from Susie. And I'm very grateful that she stays so active in research administration, even when she's consulting all over the world and doing all sorts of development of institutions that need redevelopment. And I know, like Rosie said, there are too many to name. Okay. And so if I left you off, I'm sorry. But, you're all just fabulous.
Yeah, I hate to put everybody on the spot and ask you to name some people. It is difficult to choose from all of the people that have impacted your career and your development. But I will say, Kim Moreland is definitely on my list, and actually every faculty member that I had as a part of the Johns Hopkins program, and Cindy Hope as well, has inspired me. And these are women that, when I was in the program, they really took the time to make sure that I got the material, even if it wasn't part of my day-to-day job, and have kept in touch with me since the program. And so I really love watching to see their trajectory in research administration as well, and the continued influence. And I have the privilege now of working with Susie at Seattle Children. She's doing consulting here. So I feel particularly honored and blessed to have continued leadership in my direct contacts. And I hope everyone in this call knows that there are so many people in research administration that can serve as a mentor, as an advisor, or to just give you what you need to advance your career and your leadership. And so we wanted to make sure that we closed out with giving some honor to some very special women that have not only contributed greatly to research administration, but they are no longer with us. And so, as you may know, we have a Distinguished Service Award, and it is named after Julia Jacobson. So we want to make sure we take some time to honor her legacy and her contributions to the profession of research administration, as well as our organization of Incura. And last but not least, we all know of Catherine Taylor Core, who also has the Minority Travel Award Scholarship in her name and honor. And she also recently passed away. I had the privilege of speaking with her daughter on numerous occasions, and she went on and on and on about how much her mother loved this profession and how much she contributed. And she literally loved her children around the country doing the work for research administration. And so we have a short video that we would like to share with you in her honor. Catherine was a dynamic leader and active member with Incura in the 90s when she served at Howard University here in Washington, D.C. She recognized that financial considerations were part of the reasons why minority research administrators frequently could not take full advantage of the benefits of Incura membership. Through her leadership, Incura developed our Minority Travel Award program. In 1998, the program was named in her honor and is still thriving today. Catherine came each year to the annual meeting to spend time with the Travel Award recipients and be with us for the volunteer luncheon. Catherine's optimism, gratitude, and spirit made her a very special individual that we were lucky to know. Catherine transcended to be with the Lord in April of this year. We feel her presence here today, and her legacy will live on in the Catherine Taylor Core Minority Travel Award. Wow. I hope everybody is as inspired as I am. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional after that tribute. But thank you all for your time, for your engagement, for the questions. And I want to thank all of our panelists. Thank you so much for showing up and servicing this organization in all the ways that you do. And I pray that your journey continues to be successful. And thank you to Incura, and a special thanks to the Select Committee for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and the DEI Collaborate community for the opportunity to host this panel discussion. I hope you have a great day.